My name is Gorman, and in this episode of Semilla.VC, I spoke with Javier Sanchez Aldana, managing partner at Carabela, based in Guadalajara, Mexico. In this episode, we discussed why some founders try to solve too many problems at once, what is happening in Guadalajara's venture capital and tech scene, and why Javier is betting on underrepresented founders in Latin America. We talked about all this and more in this episode of Semilla.VC. Okay, Javier, could you start by telling the audience a little bit more about your work history up to and including your current role at Carabela?
Yeah, sure. So back in 2004, I started studying business administration and marketing in Universidad Panamericana in Guadalajara. So a year into college, an opportunity knocked the door and I started making scented candles in colorful blown glass recipients, and I used to sell them in restaurants and different type of events. So 2 years later, in May 2007, I invited a co-founder to turn this like hobby into a formal business called Mexicandela. We drafted our first business model based on successful brands like Yankee Candle or Chesapeake Bay Candle in the US, because we didn't see any like premium scented candles and fragrance home products here in Mexico. So we thought there was an opportunity to innovate in that space here. So after 5 years, in December 2012, and being number one in Liverpool and number two in Soriana, which are big department stores and wholesale stores, I decided to move on and exit the business. So then I worked 2 years in a friend's family owned business. And then in 2014, I had the opportunity to join and work IBM here in Guadalajara. I worked there for 2 years, and I helped sales managers from the US and from Canada to reach their goals through business analytics. So I was in a role of like a commercial advisor. After that, in September 2017, well, not after that, I was still in IBM, but I got the opportunity to go to the DLD Innovation Festival in Tel Aviv, which is one of the best places for innovation in the world, and my mind got blown away. In that event and in that trip, I realized I wanted to be in the startup ecosystem again, but in the tech startup ecosystem. So when I came back to Guadalajara, I was still in IBM, but I started attending different events and different communities here in Guadalajara. I ended up investing in one startup I met in one of those events, and even I quit IBM because not just I invested, but I also worked over there as an early employee, right? So it was in that moment when I approached with a team to the office, Angel Ventures Guadalajara's office. They had, by that time, an angel investment network. So we reached out to them to raise capital, but we didn't make it. That was my first contact with what I'm doing today with my partners. And the startup went to the wrong direction. We had problems and frictions with the founder. And a couple of months after I invested and quit IBM, we shut it down. So it was a really painful experience, but many insights and many cool things I could learn from that experience. And just to close with this first question, later, a year later, in July 2018, I was approached and invited by Andres, one of my current partners, and Hernan, which is Angel Ventures managing partner, to join as director of Angel Ventures Guadalajara's office, to continue supporting all the activities Mexico City's office, headquarters, was doing, and with the objective to launch our own seed fund in Guadalajara when I felt ready. So after a year and a half traveling and meeting people and learning more about VC, in February 2020, Carabela was born.
Exciting. And I want to talk all about that, especially Hernan, who's also been on Semilla. So just so many different little connections there. So first, I want to get at a question that you might not get on other podcasts as the first question. But could you tell us a little bit more about Guadalajara? And could you tell us more about the tech and VC scene when you started a few years ago, what it is now? Could you paint that picture for us?
Yeah, sure. So the tech ecosystem has evolved rapidly in the last couple of years. When I started as an entrepreneur, a traditional entrepreneur, there were not many options for financing, right? We had a couple of incubators, accelerators based on universities. And as a traditional startup, I say, or business, the one I started in 2007, we only had access to like business people from Guadalajara that just wanted to support young guys starting a business, right? But there was not like this ecosystem of angel investors and VCs as we have it now, right? So Guadalajara is Mexico's second or third largest city, depending on where you sit on the table on regards with Monterrey and Guadalajara. And they say Guadalajara is Mexico. And many people say that because we have tequila, we have mariachi, we have great food, and some of those like really known things the world know about Mexico is made or is created in Guadalajara, right? But besides that, Guadalajara has a really interesting and incredible pool of talent. Many years ago, I would say 40, 50 years ago, big tech companies like IBM, Intel, HP, now Oracle, and many others arrived to the city, and it became this like tech scene, maybe not startup scene, but tech scene, really linked to Silicon Valley and the US. And more recently, startups like Uyala, Quaysky, Wiseline, Yo Te Presto, Build Pocket, Cien Ladrillos, and like this first or second generation of startups have launched, and now we have like a third and fourth generation of startups, mostly because of the talent we have here and the ecosystem here in Guadalajara. We can say government is also pretty much involved here. So we have public policies like Reto Zapopan, like FOJAL, like READY from the Ministry of Technology and Innovation that have been really on the different side on the government in a federal level, here at local level in el municipio and Jalisco, the state. They have been promoting and investing in innovation and entrepreneurship. So that has been, I think, a really important part of this ecosystem. And now we have a couple of more LPs, family offices, and as well corporations, corporates that are investing. So I think there's a lot to go. There's a lot of things we need to have more angels, for example, more funds. But Guadalajara has its own ecosystem and its own potential, which aligns really well with what's happening in Monterrey and Mexico City. So yeah, that can be like my input about Guadalajara and its tech scene.
Very exciting. And so could you tell the audience a little bit more about Carabela? What do you guys do differently? The type of companies, just really give the whole picture to someone who has yet to really understand what it is. Please tell that story.
Yeah, so a couple of things we do differently. So we don't invest in startups. We invest in entrepreneurs. And more than a stockholder, we are a partner, right? We so don't get me wrong. We love business. We want to make money, and we're here for the business, right? But people is the most important part of this equation. So that's why we say we invest in entrepreneurs. So one thing we do differently besides that is that we're known for being really straightforward and transparent with our analysis process and the time frame. So we are really open with that. Another important thing I would say is that we invest a lot of time giving feedback to the founders that come to us trying to raise capital, and by any chance we decide not to continue with the process. So we really try to give feedback in order for them to like make better pitches or change or adjust their storytelling, etc. And I would say the last thing is we also invest a lot of time participating or launching events or projects that are related with the development of the ecosystem. So I think there's too much things that have not been done, and we need to, as a new ecosystem, not just in Guadalajara, but as well in Mexico or Latam, to continue developing and helping other people with their initiatives and events to have a more cohesive and robust ecosystem. So that combination is what's Carabela doing differently to other funds.
You mentioned
And
helping some of them. Please continue. Sorry.
Yeah, like speaking about the thesis and the ticket sizes, not sure if you wanted to know more about that. So Carabela is an agnostic fund that invests, as I told you, in entrepreneurs that lead pre-seed and seed startups in Hispanic Latam, solving relevant problems with software technology. So we don't invest in hardware. We don't invest in medical devices and treatments. We don't invest in intensive operations and inventory-related startups or companies. And our ticket size ranges from 50K to 150K, being 100K the average. And valuations up to 15 million, but with relevant traction. So our sweet spot is from 4 to 6, but we can invest up to 50 million, investing 150, so we can have like a 1% ownership.
Very exciting. And could you you mentioned angel ventures in your intro. What is the relationship between your fund and angel ventures?
Yeah, sure. So Angel Ventures Guadalajara's office was launched 10 years ago in summer of 2013. So this year we are gonna celebrate with the anniversary party in November. So happy to host you here. So during that time, we have learned a lot from Angel Ventures, and we have supported them in different ways, like inviting LPs for the funds, taking like pipeline over there, helping with due diligence, etc. All the activities a fund does, we were supporting them. And Carabela was born in February 2020 as Angel Ventures Guadalajara Seed Fund. In October 2022, almost a year ago, I decided it was time to make a rebranding of Carabela and strengthen like its perception as an independent fund with its own legal structure and investment process as well, different LPs, different GPs, but we still have a close relationship and collaboration with Angel Ventures, the whole team, with Hernán, Camilo, and all the team. And we're really active in supporting our portfolio and their portfolio with the business development team we have in both funds. And that's like pretty much how we started and how are we working together as of now as real close allies and collaborations.
You mentioned helping some of the founders with maybe some mistakes they're making on the slide deck. More broadly, founders in general, what's the most common mistake you see them making, and how do you help them, and what advice would you give them to turn that ship around?
Yeah, I would say an important one is not focusing, trying to solve too many things or for too many targets or people at the same time. You know, when you try to do that, everything gets diluted. So money, time, energy, and startups usually don't have time and resources to waste. So one thing is trying to, like we say in Mexico, el que mucho abarca, poco aprieta. So you have to be really focused to make really great things. And then another mistake we have seen in our portfolio and outside is that once they get their first rounds, they try to hire too fast. And they hire sometimes talent because of what they see on the outside, but not because of their skills, right? So you can get really impressed when you see people from X, Y, or Z startup, right? Or that they have worked on a really big corporation, and you think they have all what it takes to make a great fit with you, but you don't analyze if they have a cultural fit with a startup, and not just with a startup, but with the ecosystem in general, because working at a startup is really different than working in a big corporate, right? And many times you think that working at a big corporate can give you all the skills and knowledge to apply them in the startup, but that's not real, right? So I would say those two are the biggest mistakes: not focusing and hiring talent, not based on the skills and the ability to make a fit with the cultural, with the culture of the startup, and that's pretty much dangerous in the future.
And I'm gonna ask a very broad question now. What are you most excited about?
Wow, so I would say in the professional side, we're finishing the investment period of Carabela. So we have 2 or 3 more tickets to make in the following months. And we will reach a really important milestone, right? So finishing this investment process for us is a really big milestone. And that will take us or lead us to continue or start planning, structuring, and launching Carabela's number 2 fund. So that's pretty amazing, and that's it's pretty exciting for me, and that will happen maybe on Q1 of next year. And then on the personal side, I would say I have a couple of personal trips, family trips, friend trips in the next following months that I'm really looking forward to having them.
You mentioned the trips, and you mentioned Guadalajara. What would be your 30-second pitch to someone who is going to Mexico City? They're going to be there for a few weeks. They might have a weekend or a few days where they could go to Guadalajara. Why should they come to Guadalajara?
Depending on their plans, they're going to eat deliciously here. So we have a great city, great quality of life, great startup scene, not as big as Mexico City, obviously, but we have many founders, many interesting people you can talk about, VC or startups or business in general. So yeah, I would say food, the city, and the people makes a great combination.
Makes total sense. And so you mentioned some of the fundraising components. What have you learned through one and almost two funds fundraising and talking to LPs and hearing what they like, what they don't like? What sort of advice would you give to maybe a first-time fund manager or someone who's earlier on that trajectory in talking to LPs, attracting them and getting them to invest?
Yeah, it has been a really difficult process for me raising this first fund. Carabela is an 80 million pesos fund, let's say $4.5 million. This is my first fund, and even though I had the support of Angel Ventures and my local partners, it has been really difficult. I would say because of COVID, because of whatever you want to say, it's happening outside, but as well, being a first-time founder that does not come from the industry or from an Ivy League, MBA or college, that could also be difficult, right? I would say persistence, resilience, and trust in you is the main driver to get things done. Even though it has been a really quite challenging, I would say, couple of months, but it's really years. We have I have learned a lot, and I would say those characteristics and really being really honest and really open and transparent with all the stakeholders has played in favor, but it has been really challenging. So having a plan, sticking to it, and don't throw in the towel is the best advice I would give a first-time manager or emerging manager to get on this journey.
I really like the advice you give there because it's structuring kind of the macro component of life. And it reminds me of another question that I've kind of started asking some VCs and founders, because within the Venn diagram of founders and VCs, there's a huge overlap with people who really care about their productivity and health and their ability to really get things done on the micro day-to-day basis. So do you have advice for people on maybe what you do on staying productive? You have LPs kind of looking over you as your boss, but you're really your own boss. So you have to, have that internal motivation. How do you stay on the micro level down to the ground and working?
Well, I love working, and I love this kind of work, right? I'm a really operational person. I love getting things done. I love getting my hands dirty. So I would say it's different in every person, but I can say I have the ability to have many things in mind and work on each of them, because right now the team is really small. So I have Paulina and I have Pamela, which she works half time. So it's mainly Paulina and I making Carabela work, and I have to do the payroll, answer the phone, speak with LPs, speak with entrepreneurs. So everything, right? So we're kind of a startup doing everything at every moment. But having the ability to execute and to ask for help when it's needed, and now we're two, as I told you, but being able to rely on another person as Paulina, that she could be like my right hand, and delegating and giving her confidence that things will be done. It's really important to get things done, because if not, you can be trapped and and like overwhelmed with all the things you have to do.
Totally understand.
So confidence and delegating should be top of mind.
And so finally, I have to ask Peter Thiel's famous contrarian question with uniquely Semilla.VC twist. What is one important truth about Latin America that very few people agree with you on?
I have two things. So on the entrepreneur side, I'm convinced talent is everywhere, not just in Ivy League alumni or privileged founders. And Carabela has invested in a couple of underrepresented founders, and I'm sure they have all that's needed to deliver great outcomes. The other one is on the investor side. I don't think you have to be an operator or have an operating background to be a great investor. And this is like an analogy. Just being a great soccer player doesn't guarantee you to be a great coach, right? Or a sports commentator. Skills required for launching and scaling a startup is really different from the skills required to launch, scale, and invest via fund. So being an operator can help in many ways, but I don't think it's required to be a great investor.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Javier, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Semilla.VC podcast today. I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Thank you for watching this episode of Semilla.VC. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you view the podcast. Follow me on Twitter @GormanTrip. And be sure to check out our newsletter, Dealflow LA, which can be found by going to dealflow.la.